Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider, a priest of the Legionaries of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the Star Crest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 158 and we're covering Optatum Totius 0 to 1 on the church needs to be renewed by priests, right? So this is what we're talking about. Optatum Totius, we did yesterday with the interview with Father Mark Doherty of St. Patrick's Seminary in California. We were talking about how this document is really about priestly formation, all the different aspects, right? So if you want to follow along, we have reading plan and more details, sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Today, as we're covering 0 and 1, it really talks about how we need priestly formation in general, we need it in particular for each area of the world. So, paragraph 0 is kind of before the chapters. Paragraph 1 is the entirety of chapter 1. And still, with these two paragraphs is still a pretty short day. So let's get right into it. So paragraph 0, the summary is we need good priestly training for all priests, even more now, right, than we might have needed in the past, is what they're saying. So let's read it. Animated by the Spirit of Christ, this sacred synod is fully aware that the desired renewal of the whole church depends to a great extent on the ministry of its priests. It proclaims the extreme importance of priestly training and lays down certain basic principles of which those regulations may be strengthened, which long use has shown to be sound, and by which those new elements can be added which correspond to the conditions and constitution decrees of the Sacred Council and the changed conditions of our times. Because of the very unity of the Catholic priesthood, this priestly formation is necessary for all priests, diocesan and religious, of every rite. Wherefore, while these prescriptions directly concern the diocesan clergy, they are appropriately adapted to all. Right, just a note, I call this paragraph 0, it doesn't have any numbers, just before 1. So, just in case you're trying to follow along, what do you mean paragraph 0? Yeah. So, the idea is, our ministry as priests, it comes from Christ. We're motivated by Christ. We're animated by His Spirit, right? And the Sacred Synod is aware, right? This is what renews it. This is what gives us, hey, we want to renew, we want to form priests, we want to bring new priests. It's the Spirit of Christ. And it wants to say, to have holy priests, to have priests in the Spirit of Christ, we need to renew their training, right? And so it's going to lay down certain principles, right? There's lots of good in the past. There were a lot of good things in forming priests in the past, but there's also things from our ties and the Sacred Council, etc., that need to be adapted, right? And this document is just going to lay down principles. Not going to get into details. As we're going to learn in the next paragraph, there are documents that get into way more details than this document. And that's really important. And one of the things is talking about unity for all, right? So these norms are generally about diocesan clergy, but they apply in a way to religious clergy, right? So the difference is the diocesan clergy are the ones for your diocese, for like Cincinnati or New York or Boston or whatever else. Whereas the religious ones were for our communities, whether it's Jesuits or Dominicans or Legionaries or whatever else. And so, as a legionary, I can be moved around anywhere in the province, right? With very little notice, right? Whereas the diocesan priests are moved around within their diocese, right? And there's also things like we live community life, we live a particular spirit as religious, etc., right? So there are elements that are different. And it's very interesting. In the U.S., you see kind of a mix of two ways religious are formed in seminaries, right? So some religious communities will have enough members, they have 5, 10 members, and they will have a house like a few miles from the seminary, and they'll have one priest who's maybe is like the associate pastor of the parish, something, but is also in charge of kind of the formation of the members in the spirit and human formation, things like that. And maybe they have academic and maybe a little bit more from the seminary. And you have other ones who send the religious and they live at the seminary, right? So, it's very interesting. I've seen more the previous one where the religious live off campus and then come on for studies and a few other things. But at the seminary, I'm going to teach you at the other where the religious live on campus is more the norm, right? And that just varies place to place within the U.S., right? So moving on to paragraph 1, it says the outline is each country needs to make its own plan of priestly formation. So let's read the text. Chapter 1, the program of priestly training to be undertaken by each country. Paragraph 1. Since only general laws can be made where there exists a wide variety of nations and regions, a special program of priestly training is undertaken by each country or rite. It must be set up by the episcopal conferences, revised from time to time and approved by the Apostolic See. In this way, will the universal laws be adapted to the particular circumstances of these times and localities, so that priestly training will always be in tune with the pastoral needs of those regions in which the ministry is to be exercised. Right? So there are a lot of differences between countries, right? Even Canada and the U.S., which are culturally very similar, at least English-speaking Canada, have different programs of formation, right? So the Canadian one, I think they have the same one in English and French. I don't read good enough French to know for sure, right? I looked at it, it looked like the same document, but I'm not guaranteeing that because my French is not that great, right? And I remember even when we had our renewal, we were going through the Constitution and the Legion to revise them all in our renewal process. There were certain elements on formation that came out a very distinction between different countries. Where different countries saw different needs in their country and like, okay, well, legionaries need to be formed for the needs of the country that I'm from, where I've done ministry, and we should do X or Y, right? And that's important. Even a religious community might have variations between, what how the religious community does formation in Brazil versus the U.S. or something, right? And so this is done by the bishops' conferences, right? It's adapting universal law to particular circumstances, and it's regularly revised, right? That is an important thing that they do a regular revision. So, for example, I think it's 2022, the 6th edition of the USCCB, so U.S. Bishops, Program of Priestly Formation came out. It's about 250 pages, and I have to read it now because I'm taking on a role where I have to be responsible for that. And I read the 5th edition last time, and I have to read the 6th edition. I literally, as I was writing the script for this, I'm like, oh, I meant to order that on Amazon. Yes, I can print out a 200-page PDF, but I was just like, if it's a 200-page PDF, the $20 is going to cost me for a nicely bound printed one is probably worth it. People might disagree on that, but I just find it easier to do it that way. And so I ordered it. I didn't order it on Amazon. I ordered it on some other book website. I forget which one I ordered it on, right? So, but I ordered it, right? So, because I need to read it in my new role, teach and being on the formation team, not just teach at the seminary, I need to understand it, right? And I generally understand. I just read the previous edition. So that's all today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This was obviously a shorter episode. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow we're going to continue with the next paragraph of Optatum Tutsius, which is paragraph 2, which is on we all need to foster vocations. So this is one that might apply more broadly than most of this document. We're talking about seminaries and things like that, but this applies to everyone, every parish, every family promoting vocations. So we have lots of priests to serve the church. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information, like playlists and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There's also an SQPN Discord channel with SQPN Discord, Discord, it's not a channel, Discord General. And there's a channel for Vatican II in a Year. You just go to sqpn.com/Discord.